Hi, everybody. I am fidgeting with the Zoom window right now. I'm trying to see if I can see everybody, but it doesn't look like it. Okay. We will go on. That's not what I wanted to do. There we go. Okay. I apologize for not being there in person. Again, I much prefer in-person presenting to virtually presenting, but unfortunately my daughter, who is in the 4th grade, came home with COVID last week, and then I caught it, and we're making its way through our house, and I thought it best for me not to do public things until it's cleared up. And this happened last time that we were scheduled to. Maybe it's this meeting. Maybe I'm never meant to do this in person at Osterville, that every time we schedule it, someone's going to get COVID that lives with me. Hopefully that's not the case. But what is interesting about this is that I can't see myself. There we go. Okay. So yeah, I apologize again for not being there in person. Hopefully that isn't the case. Having COVID is no fun, but fortunately, we're all mending relatively quickly. So thank you for having me. My name is Michelle Woodbury. It's right here on the screen. My sister Allison and I started this company called Two Sisters Senior Living Advisors. We're in our 12th year. Our goal is to work with folks and help them understand what care options are best suited to their wants and needs, their care needs, their budget, their location preferences, and then to help them find the right fit. And one of the things that we noticed is that people don't know the differences between assisted living communities, nursing homes, and all the rest. And it's not just lay people, it's professionals within the industry, because that isn't their focus, that isn't their primary wheelhouse. So that's ours. That's that we do. We specialize in these nuances. It looks like, Judith, can you not hear me? You're muted too, so I can't hear you. I'm gonna give Judith just a minute. I can't hear what she's saying, but it looks like she's gonna go get a headset.
Okay, I'm gonna go get another hearing aid and see another battery and hope that helps. Got it.
All right. Well, I'll talk slowly while we wait for Judith to come back. My sister and I have this business, and we help people find the right level of care. And one of the things that we noticed over the years is that there's an appeal for people to look at what are called continuing care retirement communities. And I'm going to go over what those are in just a little bit. But a continuing care retirement community is, sorry, I was just noticing also the graphic on this slide looks like it needs to be edited a little bit. Anyway, a continuing care retirement community is where, typically speaking, you buy in, or there's an entry fee. So you have to put down a significant amount of money, which is held usually in an escrow account, where the community is keeping the interest, the savings interest. And then when somebody moves out, they are refunded. Their estate is refunded a certain percentage, usually like 95% of that entry fee back. Now, the reason why people do that and put this money away and sort of tie it up is because the continuum of care that they're buying into includes all of the different care levels that they might need. So in almost every circumstance, people move into this type of community, into the independent living. And then when they need some support, they either bring care in from a home care agency, similar to how they would have done at home. Hi, Judith. All better. Good. So I was just explaining what a continuing care retirement community is. This presentation is not all about continuing care retirement communities, but in order to sort of launch what I'm about to talk about, I want to start by talking about what is a continuing care retirement community, because the idea of the continuum of care is what is so appealing to so many people. So the continuum of care, just a quick recap for Judith, is where you buy in to an independent living apartment. Usually if there's an entry fee, it isn't always a real estate transaction, but you're paying the community, and oftentimes it's several $100,000 or more that they hold in an escrow account while you're there. And they keep the interest from that money while you are staying with them. And when somebody moves out of a continuing care retirement community, their estate is refunded a percentage, oftentimes as much as 95% of that initial fee that they paid. So it's a little bit of protecting assets as well. But the big benefit, and one of the reasons why people really like continuing care retirement communities, is the idea that if you move into independent living and you can live independently and benefit from the lifestyle they have to offer, then you can bring a home care in to support you when you need a little bit of help in your apartment, or you move over to the assisted living, which is on the campus. And then if you need more care than that at any point, or you run out of money, then you can go on to MassHealth and you move over to the nursing home on the campus. So it is all built in. When somebody moves into a continuing care retirement community, they know that, the plan, I'm sorry, hiccups. The plan is for them to be cared for, regardless of what their care needs might be. And that assurance is very appealing to people. So we got to thinking over here in my company, how can people create this continuum without going to one of these communities if that isn't within their budget or really what they want to do? Truthfully, there's only one continuing care retirement community on Cape Cod. It's Mayflower, Maplewood and Mayflower Place is a CCRC. They have become a hybrid. They have some flexible pricing, so you can go into that community without buying in a significant amount, but that isn't how it was originally designed. And it is the only one on Cape Cod that offers the true continuum. But if you don't want to go there, for whatever reason, it isn't the right fit for you, how can you bring the elements of the care continuum into your own life so that you have peace of mind that you will be cared for and you know what will happen at each stage of the game? So that's what this presentation is about. I do apologize because I haven't quite figured out how to streamline this down. It's longer than it should be, and we will likely run out of time, but let's carry on and go from there. So before we go any further into this, I want to have a quick discussion, but it's kind of hard to do one-sided like this. But I want to bring up the difference between two philosophies that you will see in the senior care, senior living realm. They both exist. They mean different things to different people, and they're not interchangeable, but many people use them that way. So continuing care, what I just mentioned, a community that provides housing, services, and healthcare all at one location. It's very specific to it being a community. A continuing care is, when people say that, they are referring to a place. They offer the services necessary for you to age in place. There's the other term. How is one in the definition of the other? As your healthcare change, as your health needs change, you can stay at the retirement community. So you are aging in place. Now, aging in place is a more widely used term. And again, it's thrown around a lot and it means something different depending on who you're talking to. Oops, I need to do that. I need to move this bar down. There we go. So aging in place, by definition, according to the CDC, says that it's living in one's own home safely, independently, and comfortably, regardless of age, income, or ability level. Now, here's where things get interesting, because aging in place, if you move to an assisted living community, that becomes your home. And so aging in place at an assisted living community is aging in place. If you move to a nursing home, technically speaking, that becomes your home because you've moved. And so you're aging in place. But the idea is that wherever you are, you get to stay there. And the services that you need change based on what your needs are. So a true age in place assisted living, for example, means that you can move in as an independent person into the assisted living and not receive any care services. You're getting meals and housekeeping and utilities and the social calendar and all of the benefits of being in assisted living or even in independent living, but you don't have any care needs. And then as you begin to need some support with things maybe like getting dressed safely for balance or a standby assistance in the shower, things like that, as you start to need those kinds of services, they come to you. You don't have to move to a different apartment to get care. That's aging in place. And then if you start to need more help, things like getting in and out of bed or a chair or to the bathroom, things like that. Again, if you don't have to move, if they can change the care services to where you are, if you're home and you bring in home care, if you're in assisted living and you increase your care, that's aging in place. If you're the one that has to do the moving, as in the case of a continuing care retirement community, technically speaking, that is not aging in place. I mean, it is in terms of it's all on one campus, and so you're in one place, but you still have to move your apartment and your place of being. So the two different philosophies. Continuing care means that all the care, I talk with my hands, but then I forget that you're off screen, so I have to hold it in front of me. Continuing care means that all the care that you might need is available for you on a campus, typically speaking, or in the area, and you have that lined up so that you know where you are going to get care, no matter where you are in the continuum of your aging process. And aging in place means you're staying put, and the care you need is coming to you as your needs change. Does anyone have any questions before I go on? Because this is kind of the backbone to understanding what a continuum is. And what I find in Elizabeth, I'll get to you in just one second. What I find in this presentation is a lot of people want to design an age in place plan with the continuum elements in it. That ends up being the result of this presentation. Elizabeth, what's your question?
Hi, I have experience with continuing care communities based on my mother's having been in one. And doctors are not included. So maybe the podiatrist will come to the facility, but all of the other doctors that aging people need to go to still have to be arranged with either transportation provided typically transportation can be provided by the community, but it's not easy, and it isn't on site. And
Well,
that's one problem.
That depends on the community. There are many continuing care retirement communities that do, and there are many age-in-place communities that do. I was actually at an event last night, and I met there's a physician's practice group that I had not heard of that goes into these communities. Most that I know of have a physician that visits.
That's true. Yes.
And
Yes.
it's up to the person to choose whether they want to use that physician or not. But physicians, podiatrists, optometrists, dentists, all of those professionals, depending on the community, do visit and have visiting hours. It sounds like the one where your mom was at.
It didn't quite have all those, but even if it did, she was seeing various specialists that I was taking her to.
Yeah, so specialists are most likely gonna fall outside of that. So here's the most important thing, I think, the analogy of a launch pad is coming to mind. But before you launch off and choose what type of option is the right one for you or your loved ones, whoever you're inquiring about. And I think a lot of people they just go off and start looking for options and making a plan without really doing this first. And I think that this is one of the biggest values that I think we offer to people, and it's not something that I can even quantify or qualify for that matter. But helping people understand what their aging goals are. There are not that many. But if you don't define what you want to have happen for yourself or your loved one, it's going to be much harder to achieve it. It always is. And anything, if you don't have a goal in mind, it's really hard to accomplish it. And so this is, I think, the crux of what I hope you take away from this presentation is figure out what you want to have happen. When I meet with clients and we have a conversation about what they imagine in their future and what they would like to have happen, and if you can present me with one that I haven't thought of, then I will gladly add it to the slide. But one of these 5 things tends to come up, and they are in order of how often I hear them most. And this is not data driven. This is just anecdotal. So, but I talk to people and I'll say, well, where do you see yourself? What do you want to have happen? And a lot of people will say, I'm leaving this house feet first. This is the last place I'm not leaving. This is where I want to be. I want to be in this house. I want to spend the end of my life at home. Okay, check. That is an aging goal. That is what you are expressing to me. That's what you want to have happen. A lot of people subsequent to that, or maybe this is the second most popular, could be the first, I'm not sure. But I never want to go to a nursing home. No matter what happens, I want to avoid living in the nursing home. And we're going to talk for a minute, real quick, about the difference between nursing homes and assisted living, because I think a lot of people in their mind, when they think I don't want to leave my home, are picturing a nursing home that they have to go to, when in fact there are many wonderful not nursing home options that can offer them everything they need without the struggle that they are currently having and trying to stay in their home. Couples will often express that they want to stay together, even though their needs are differing, and increasingly so as people age, their needs become different from one another, that they want to stay together. That's an expressed goal. These 3 are the most common, and they oftentimes, what's the expression? The hunter that chases 2 rabbits catches neither. That's some like Chinese proverb or Japanese proverb or something like that. But if you go after both of these things or 2 of these goals at the same time, without having one being the priority, you may not be able to do either one. So I see a lot of times people stay home. Their goal is to stay home. And so they just stay home and they don't have a plan for staying home. They just don't listen to anything that involves not staying home. And then they end up in a crisis situation where home is challenging because they need home care and they can't get that home care staff that they need for whatever reason, or they don't have the money then to pay for the amount of home care that they need, because they're living in what would be the asset that they had to pay off to pay for that home care. So they have to look into other creative financing options. And then they end up having to move out because they can't get their needs met in their home. And they spent all their money, trying to stay home, and they end up having to go to a nursing home. So, that's just sort of in trying to avoid going to a nursing home and stay at home at the end of one's life without a plan, they manage to not be able to stay home and end up in a nursing home. So it's really important, this planning piece. Identify what it is you want to have happen, and then figure out how you can make it happen. I think I have it as one of my later slides if I get to it, but it's a little bit like wearing a seatbelt, in my opinion. When I go out driving, I don't put a seatbelt on because I'm intending to go out and get into a crash. I put the seatbelt on because if I get into a crash, I'm hoping it's going to minimize the impact of that event. And my suggestion is figure out what your goal is and come up with a plan. Even if you don't want to enact that plan, having it in place is like having your seatbelt on. Stay at home, keep doing what you're doing as long as you possibly can. If you never need that seatbelt, are you going to be mad that you put it on all those times that you went out to drive? No, you just did it. So if you put a plan in place that it never gets enacted, you spent a little bit of time and energy doing research for something you didn't need. But having that in place, having that plan in place will minimize the impact, the difficulty of figuring out what's going to happen when the time comes, if it does. So that's what I'm suggesting here, is have these difficult conversations and plan out what you want to have happen, and then back up from there and put a plan in place. Other things that I hear from people sometimes are that they want to preserve their assets. They want to pass their money on to their kids, or for whatever reason. And that's a perfectly good goal to have. But it's important that if that is your goal, then you work with an attorney. In fact, in any of these, it's important that I think you touch base with an attorney about your estate plan. If you own a house, or have any other assets, it needs to be done in a certain way so that you can go on to MassHealth at some point in the future, and MassHealth will pay for your care. That requires planning. It's right now there's a 5-year look back period, and this is not a presentation on MassHealth. So if you have questions about MassHealth, we do have presentations on nursing homes and MassHealth, and I can go more into that. You can always reach out to me on one-to-one too. But in order to go on to MassHealth, you have to qualify, which means you have, and for a couple, the qualifications are different, but a single individual has to have less than $2,000 in assets. And that includes your house and your vehicle and many things like that. It is not income based. It's asset based. So you also have to have a care need. You can't move into a nursing home just because you have impoverished yourself and you can't pay for the care. You need to demonstrate that you have a skilled care need. A couple, they're called activities of daily living, a couple of activities of daily living, or a skilled care need in order for MassHealth to pay for you to be in a nursing home. But that is where MassHealth will pay for you to be. So if you want to preserve your money, there are people that have enough. You can go to assisted living and preserve your money for your kids. But a lot of times if it's the sale of a home, And if it's on Cape Cod and the typical home is, you know, $400,000, let's say, you know, that's a decent amount of money to spend down, and to pay for your care. But it's not going to last. It's depending on your age and where you're living, it's not going to last forever. So in order to protect that money, you meet with an attorney, and you can put that money in Medicaid approved trusts. There's other ways to protect your assets, but understand that what that means is that when the time comes that you need care, you're going into a nursing home. And so the planning part of this is then, you know, weighing out which goal is more important. Do you want to stay out of the nursing home, or do you want to pass money down to your kids? If you have to make the choice between the two, prioritize one over the other, and then you have sort of a place to build your continuum around. And then the last one I hear a lot is that, you know, they don't want to be a burden, and they don't want to end up in the home of a child, because they realize that would be not a positive situation for everybody involved. Some people don't mind. You know, I took care of my kids, so I raised them, and now they need to take care of me. And if that's fine, and then you know, we can rearrange the goals based on where your values and your priorities lie. But these are the most common things that I hear about what people want to have happen as they age, if they need some support and they can't stay home independently anymore. So think about what you want to have happen. There are four buckets, I should say, that we use to determine and design somebody's continuum of care. What are their current care needs, and what might their future care needs be? Most of the time in continuum of care planning, people are independent still, or they are part of a couple where one is independent and the other might have some needs. So it's hard to predict what care needs might be in the future. If someone has a diagnosis of some sort, then we can, you know, without having a crystal ball, predict some of the care needs that might be needed. But in general, I tend to be both an optimist and a worst case scenario practitioner at the same time. And so how do those things coexist? I do believe the best is possible and is going to happen, but I also believe that by talking about what a worst case scenario would be and figuring out how you would handle that, and then backing out from there, you can put in a plan for almost any scenario. So in a worst case scenario, if somebody wants to stay home, if somebody, without knowing what their care needs might be in the future, if somebody wants to stay home, a worst case scenario might be where they need 2 certified nursing assistants to safely help them transfer out of bed to use the bathroom. And they need that support 24 hours a day. That's a really severe, you know, if somebody's home and they need 2 CNAs 24 hours a day, that's not heard of that often. So more often than not, if you needed awake 24/7 care in your home around the clock, was 1 awake CNA cost. So if we look at that, if you average, let me get my calculator because math isn't my strength and I don't know this number off the top of my head, despite the fact that I do these presentations all the time. If the average cost, the cost of an average caregiver per hour is $30 an hour for an in-home care aide. And on Cape Cod, that's probably accurate. Staffing's very, very, you unfortunately have additional challenges with staffing that other places that are easier to access and easier to provide housing I don't quite have, which I'm sure you were already a little bit aware, but if it's $30 an hour, times 24 hours a day, that's $720 a day for an in-home, an awake And so what I mean by awake is that it's not just one caregiver. They're done in shifts. So there'll be either 2 12-hour shifts or 3 8s or some combination of people, so that they're there only for a shift and then another awake person. A live-in caregiver is a different scenario. That's if somebody is living in your home with you, and a live-in needs to be given a certain number of hours to sleep per day. I think it's 5.5, but that isn't, don't quote me on that. It's somewhere around there. So there's a period of time where you would be without care because your caregiver is sleeping and is not working. So 24/7 awake care is typically if somebody's in a nursing home or a hospital and the discharge planner says you can't be alone, you can't discharge home, you need 24/7 supervision, that's what they're referring to. So $720 a day is really expensive for somebody who is trying to stay at home. But if it's within your budget, then that's absolutely a consideration that you can keep on the table. If that is not within your budget, then you know that staying at home is not a plan that is going to work for you under many, many circumstances. So, we all wish, at least almost everybody that I know of wishes, that we are going to go to sleep one day and just not wake up the next day. That would be the ideal for everybody. Or that we just have a sudden heart attack that isn't very painful and we collapse and have no idea what happened. But either way, it's sudden and we didn't need care. So given that is what we want, the reality is, and I've been looking for a more updated statistic, but I'd say it's pretty accurate. I think it was like 2010 or something. Genworth did a study and found that 7 out of 10 adults in America will need help with at least one activity of daily living at some point in their lifetime. So getting dressed or taking a shower, whatever. 7 out of 10. So only 3 out of 10 people, 30 out of 100 people, are either not going to live long enough to get to that point, or are going to end up going to sleep and not waking up and not needing any care, or in some other way meeting their end and not needing any care. So the statistics are not in our favor that we are going to be one of the 3 in 10 that aren't going to need any help. The point is that putting a plan in place for what you need, what you should do when you do need help, is statistically the smarter thing to do. And again, if you never need that plan, then great. But chances are that you will have some care needs. And then we look at what your budget can withstand. For people who, we look at assets and income. If somebody is a veteran, there may be benefits available that they aren't aware of, not disability benefits specific to senior living, that we can see if you qualify for, that can pay towards the cost. But how long, if somebody moves into an assisted living community, for example, paying privately, how long can they afford that before they will have depleted their assets? In other words, is within your lifetime, is MassHealth something that you should have your eye on and be concerned about, or not? And those are some calculations that we can do, again, using our fictitious crystal ball and making some assumptions about what the future might hold. But those two things right there help, at least my company. I can take those things and calculate it and spit it right out and help you design exactly what your continuum might look like. You stay home until this X, Y, or Z happens, and then you move to this community, and you can stay here until your money runs out, and when you have a year left, then you're going to go into, you're going to get on the wait list and go into this nursing home. Although on Cape right now, nursing homes have longer than, have really long wait lists for long-term care. So it may even be more than a year out. Location, I have a little star here, is the most variable of the factors. So if your care needs and your budget are specific, and you're looking for a very certain lifestyle, you may be able to find it if you look a little farther away than you would initially think that you would be comfortable with. So if you really do love the idea of a continuing care retirement community, for example, then maybe moving off Cape would be a smart idea, especially if you have loved ones who live in the Metro West area, for example, and you're moved closer to them. I have had people move from Cape Cod to assisted living communities in Quincy, which wasn't really at all what they wanted to do when they started meeting with me, but it was because it was either going into a nursing home on Cape Cod or going into an assisted living in Quincy and or somewhere like that, because the pricing is so much more affordable in certain pockets of Massachusetts for the same type of care that it's worth the drive or the commute for a loved one, and you kind of have to weigh that out. But that's the variable that we can play with the most in order to find something that fits into somebody's care needs and their budget. And then the last thing here, and I change what I call this all the time. I used to have personality here, but it's nuances and the benefits of the specific community. Elizabeth mentioned doctors not visiting. Like if that's a hot button, then finding a community that has physicians and all of the support services that you would want, and with providers that you like that visit that facility, that might be a feature that you seek out if that's important to you. Some people it's covered parking or a vegetarian diet or other Russian speaking caregivers. I don't know, I'm just rattling things off that I hear, but other things that we should take into account that are not specific to care needs, budget, and location. So this is a presentation all of its own. In fact, I think I've done it. We've done it for the Osterville Library. We're happy to do it again. This is probably the presentation that we're known for the most. I'm not going to do the presentation because we don't have time, but these are the senior care options that are available in Massachusetts. And I'm going to simplify, we'll start, home health care. Senior housing is income based. So you apply and based on whether you qualify and when there is availability, your rent is like 30% usually of your income, which makes it affordable for you to bring in other support services. I will say, if you suspect in the future that income-based housing might be something you want to take advantage of, do yourself a favor and do the research now and get on the wait list now, because each town that I know of in Massachusetts has like a 3 to 5 year wait list. And if they say no, I believe you don't have to accept the apartment. You can stay on the wait list, but look into it sooner rather than later. A CCRC, like I mentioned earlier in the beginning, a continuing care retirement community. One of the benefits that a CCRC can offer that you can't get really anywhere else, and unless you buy a long-term care insurance policy, and most of you won't qualify, or if you do qualify, it would not be worth it because the premium would be so high, it wouldn't be worth it. But if you do qualify to go into a CCRC, many of them have something called a life care plan, and so you have to be independent. You cannot move into an independent living community on a life care plan with home care. You have to be able to walk in independently of your own volition, and in some cases live there for a certain period of time without bringing in private care. But and they do a fairly significant physical assessment and financial assessment. But if you qualify and they accept you and you move into independent living, let's just say, I'm going to make up a real low number, but just for the ease of conversation, your monthly maintenance fee or your rent is $2,000 a month. And because you paid them $800,000 to get into the continuing care retirement community, hypothetically speaking. And your rent is $2,000 a month in independent living. And then you start to need some care services and you move over to the assisted living, your rent would still be $2,000, even though you're now in assisted living and receiving some support. And in many places, even if you need to go into memory care or the nursing home, your cost stays the same because you bought into this continuum of care. And that is really a very nice benefit for people who qualify and can take advantage of that. But that isn't necessarily the only benefit to a continuing care retirement community. To a continuum of care, because what this presentation is about is designing your own continuum. But unfortunately, we can't add that life care plan part into it, into your own continuum. That's something that if you really are interested in, you need to look at one of those types of communities that offer that. Independent living is different. It's just a month-to-month rental. It's a lot like assisted living, but not all the meals are included. Sometimes they are, but usually there's like one meal a day is included and housekeeping services, but not care. It's for people who are truly independent. You can bring care in from a home care agency, or many of these places are attached to an assisted living, or are even within the same building. There are some places that you can move in as an independent resident into an independent living apartment, and then when you start to need care, that community will put you on a care plan, and then you stay in your apartment and caregivers start coming in to help you with what it is that you need help with. And so the independent living and the assisted living is all intermingled, integrated. But it is not a buy-in. Those types of independent living are typically just rentals. Assisted living communities are places where all 3 meals a day are included. And do I have a slide? Let me just check something really quick. Okay, so I do go over each of these. So let me go to the assisted living. Well, there we go. So the assisted living is a lot like, no, I skipped that slide. Okay, so assisted living is not a black and white term. A lot of people think it is, like nursing home, not nursing home. But assisted living communities are different in that some can provide almost as much care as a nursing home, and others act a lot more like independent living communities in that if somebody needs a lot of assistance transferring in and out of a chair, or they have issues with incontinence, the assisted living community is going to tell them they need to bring in private care or move out into a nursing home. But 3 meals a day are included, as well as, assistance. So if somebody has a fall or needs help around the overnight, some places include all utilities are included, like heat, gas, trash, all that. But some places also include phone and cable. Other places, phone and cable is a little bit separate. Memory care refers to memory care assisted living. It falls under the assisted living designation. There are memory care units in nursing homes, but in this presentation, we're talking about a neighborhood. The terminology in assisted living for memory care is neighborhood. And it's specifically for people who really lack safety awareness to be on their own for any length of time. typically that means if they're wandering or, you know, get lost, but it can also mean if somebody is not able to walk and they lack the safety awareness to remember, and they keep trying to get up to go to the bathroom or do something else, and they keep having falls. That lack of safety awareness means that somebody's care needs are going to be better met. In a memory care part of an assisted living, where the staffing ratios are higher, and they are just, it's designed specifically with the assumption that the people there don't have the safety awareness. So the one thing that, or I shouldn't say the one thing, but one of the limitations of assisted living and particularly memory care is that if somebody is agitated and is resistant to care and is lashing out or is having behaviors that are a danger to themselves or others, assisted living communities cannot restrain people, and they cannot either medically, chemically, but through medications. And this is what PRN means, is as needed. So if somebody needs antipsychotic medications as needed, meaning they're agitated, we have to calm them down, let's give them a med. Assisted living can't do that. Somebody can be prescribed a dosage of an antipsychotic med, like every night at 11 they get this medication. If that's the case, then assisted living can do that, but it's the decision-making piece that assisted livings are not allowed to have. Even their nurse, who is a nurse by full qualifications, is not allowed to say this person needs a certain med. But sometimes the nurses can do that. It depends on the medication, honestly, but it is a limitation. Sometimes people need to live in a nursing home. There are very few rest homes in Massachusetts. I put this slide on because I got called out and I skipped over it and I got called out too many times, but there are a dozen or so rest homes. They're a hybrid between an assisted living and a nursing home. So they operate more like nursing homes, but they look and feel more like assisted living communities. And then hospice is a benefit that's covered by Medicare or insurance that can happen anywhere. There are some hospice houses, but they're actually not designed for people to live in long term. But hospice is something that kind of comes to you. I'm going to go back up to this slide here, this one here, and put these all into three buckets. There are three places where somebody can live in the state of Massachusetts if they need care support. Only three. And I know you're looking at this slide, but you're like, there's like 10 things on here. No, one is home. If someone needs care support, they can live at home. They can live in their home and they can live in your home. It could be anybody's home, but it's a home. And they have home care coming in. That's one place in Massachusetts that people live where they need care. Another one is in a private pay community setting, like an assisted living. So on this slide, I don't know if you can see my mouse here, but these first, senior housing, CCRC, independent living, assisted living, memory care, and rest homes, for the most part, are all the second bucket. Okay. Anywhere that somebody goes to live where they're paying out of pocket and they're receiving care is in that second bucket. So the easy is home, assisted living, because I use that as the umbrella term. So anything independent living, memory, all of that, assisted living. And the third bucket is nursing home. And again, hospice can happen anywhere. But the difference is that nursing home is the only place where somebody can live if they need 24-hour supervision and they need to be on MassHealth. So another important thing to know about is that there are only two reasons that, and I thought I had this slide on here, but it seems like I opened the wrong presentation. There are only two reasons why someone lives in a nursing home. And even before I say that, I want to say that most nursing homes in Massachusetts only do two things. They serve two functions. Some just are one or the other, but most of them do both. Short-term rehab and long-term care. I'm not talking about rehab in this presentation. Rehab, the idea is to get you back to where you came from, at or better than when you arrived. But that's short-term. So for the purposes of this conversation, I'm talking about long-term care. There are only 2 reasons why someone lives in a nursing home for long-term care, long-term nursing home. One is if their care needs cannot be met in any other setting. There are not that many things that there are some assisted living communities that can provide almost everything a nursing home can provide. There are not that many things that will keep somebody out of that will make someone have to live in a nursing home. One is if they have injections and they cannot manage their injections on their own. If somebody, oftentimes it's due to diabetes is the most common, but if somebody's diabetic and they cannot do injections on their own, an assisted living or a private pay home care company cannot help with injections. By regulations, they are not allowed to do that. A nurse can. You can have a private nurse come in, and if that's within your budget, then that's fabulous. But for many people, it is not within their budget. So like my dad has an insulin, he's in assisted living, he has an insulin injection, it's only once a week. So that's not cost prohibitive. We have a nurse that comes in once a week and does that injection for him. But if it starts to become daily or multiple times daily, the cost will be prohibitive and we won't be able to continue that. So we'll have to come up with a different plan. I don't see that becoming a problem, or I wouldn't have made that move, but for him, but just so you know, and this can't do injections. Other things, sometimes people will have wounds that won't heal, certain stages wounds they cannot manage in assisted living. But aside from that, it's big things like respirators, ventilators, most types of feeding tubes. Those types of things require a skilled nurse around the clock. But short of that, I mean, if someone needs 2 certified nursing assistants to help them get in and out of a wheelchair, maybe even a mechanical lifting device to help them safely maneuver from one place to another, to go to the bathroom, to take a shower, that's not necessarily medical. And there are assisted living communities that can accommodate that level of care. So, but if not, if your care needs are such that you require a skilled nurse around the clock, then you have to live in a nursing home, or have skilled nursing in your home around the clock, which again, extremely expensive. The other reason why someone lives in a nursing home long term is if they can't afford the care they need in any of those other settings. They can't afford the home care to come in. They can't afford to go into an assisted living. They need to go on to MassHealth and access that benefit to pay for their care. In which case, a nursing home is the only place that they can go and live that will be fully subsidized by MassHealth. There are some waiver programs that help people get home care in the home if they qualify for MassHealth, but it's not 24 hours. So knowing that that's like the worst case scenario, and then there's only 2 reasons why somebody lives in a nursing home long term, you can then back out from there and plan for, if your goal is to stay home, then how much home care can you afford before it won't work anymore? And if it isn't 24 hours, then there's a red flag. I'm not saying that home care won't work. I'm just saying pay attention to that red flag that just popped up. That if you need 24 hours a day care and it's not within your budget, that plan may not work. In which case you should have a backup plan. What would be affordable if you needed 24-hour care? And take a look at what those options are. You get yourself on a wait list that you don't ever intend to use if you don't want to, but if you need to, at least you have something lined up. And it's the same thing. If you do the math calculations, or you look at the levels of care and it looks like assisted living may not support you for the rest of your life, then you can do yourself a favor and look at nursing homes there's a website, and we have again, another presentation that we do on a regular basis that is all about the Nursing Home Compare website. In fact, we have one coming up in October 5th. It's virtual like this. My nursing home specialist is going to be giving the presentation, and it's how to choose a rehab. We've never done this presentation before. We always focus on long-term care because that's where our specialty is. But she ran a nursing home for 3 years, and she knows a lot of stuff about, and we get a lot of questions about rehab. So she's going to do that presentation. But we use this website. In this website, and it's at public access, but we just know right where to go to look for it. You can find things like my favorite number, and I know we're running a little out of time, like I said we would. Well, my favorite number in this whole website is the CNA hours per resident per day. Oftentimes when people are looking at going into nursing homes, they will wonder, how long will it be when I push my pull? I do that every time when I push my pull cord. How long will it be when I pull my pull cord that somebody comes to answer and respond to me? If I have to go to the bathroom, how long am I going to have to wait? That number isn't specifically in there as a number, but you can figure it out by comparison. So you can take the CNA hours per resident per day of any nursing home and compare it with the Massachusetts state average. And if you look at 4 or 5 nursing homes that are decently rated on that site, and you pull out that number, the CNA hours per resident per day against the Massachusetts state average, it will literally jump off the page at you which places are staffing higher. When someone pulls their pull cord in a nursing home, it's almost always the CNA that's going to answer the pull cord. That's their job. Sometimes someone else might pinch hit, but it's the certified nursing assistant. So let's just say the average in Massachusetts, I'm going to make up a number, is 1 hour and 45 minutes because I haven't looked in the site for a while. But let's just say the average in Massachusetts is 1 hour and 45 minutes per resident per day. If you pull out 4 nursing homes and compare it to the Massachusetts state average, and one of them is staffing at 1 hour per resident per day, 1 hour CNAs, 1 CNA hours per resident per day, and another facility is staffing at 3 hours per resident per day, what that tells me is that the facility that's staffing 1 hour has 45 minutes less care than the average nursing home in Massachusetts. So their response time is going to be slower than the average nursing home in Massachusetts by probably a significant amount. 45 minutes is kind of a big deficit. And the facilities that are staffing at 3 hours per resident per day, if the state average is 1 hour and 45 minutes, but at this facility they're staffing 3 hours, that means that at that facility, the response time is going to be much faster than the average nursing home in Massachusetts. So while we don't have a specific time, it takes them 8 minutes to get to you, you would definitely want to move into the facility that has the 3 hours of CNA hours per day rather than the 1 and 45. And if you correlate that, again, another presentation we do is about looking at the quality of care measures and the inspection scores. If you take that staffing ratio, it almost always correlates either positively or negatively to the way that they're providing care. And we can do that with both long-term and short-term rehab. My company is the only one that I know of that has specifically a nursing home placement service that really helps people go through this process and identify which nursing homes they want to get on the wait list for. But there are other professionals. I know the outreach workers at the Council on Aging, the Elder Services of Cape Cod and the Islands have options counselors, and they can provide some free resources that you can get started with. And that kind of brings me to the end of the presentation. I want to go back to the determining factors in sort of creating your continuum that you really need to get a handle on, or what are the care needs that you might need to plan for. And if you don't have any yet, again, just what if I needed 24-hour supervision, 24-hour help in my, what plan for that? Because that's going to be the most expensive and the hardest to staff. And if you need less than that, then you'll be prepared. And what does your budget look like? If you want to stay home and you know, I'm typically, hiccups again. I typically am speaking, I'm not a huge fan of the reverse mortgage, but if that will allow you to complete your continuum of care, then maybe that's something you look into. So you can use the money and the equity of your home to stay home. But if your goal is to not go into a nursing home, then, you know, using a reverse mortgage might be, what's the expression, cutting off your nose to spite your face. You might end up having to go into a nursing home because you won't have the equity or the private pay funds to do anything else when you sell your home. But these are the factors. What are your projected care needs? What budget do you have to work with? Is your location flexible? And then are there other specific things that you are going to need or want? If you have a pet, finding a pet-friendly place falls into that category. These are the 4 criteria that you would use to design your own continuum. These are some resources. I mentioned some of them just a bit ago, the Councils on Aging and the Aging Service Access Point, the Elder Services. But here are some other, these are links. So I have a typo. I have to fix it. Tonries. I've done this presentation probably a dozen times, and this is the first time I noticed that typo, and no one's pointed it out. Anyway, if you go to my website, the link is there, Two Sisters-SLA, and you go to our helpful info resources tab. These are links. You don't have to search them. You can just click on them, and they'll bring you right to those resources. But these are places that you can get the information that you need in order to build your continuum. Of course, my company offers free initial phone conversations. So I'm happy to talk with you about your situation and help you define, you know, what goals you're working towards. And then we can talk about what we can do to support you if you wanted to hire us. I know we're at the time mark, but I leave a couple minutes. Does anybody have any questions?